bit before I get going? Just make it a little bit brighter. Let me see. Maybe just a minute. That's good. Make it less dark and dingy in here. Okay, I'm good. All right. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Hey everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. Hope you're doing well. We're about to embark on a special little interview with the one, the only singer-songwriter, multi-instrumentalist, artist extraordinaire, Mr. Gene Dawson. How are you doing, man?
I'm good. Can't complain at all.
Awesome. All right. New record dropped last year. I enjoyed it. A lot of other people enjoyed it. When building up to the release of this record, what were your hopes and aspirations for it? And has, in your opinion, the reception been positive? What you expected? Are things kind of taking off in the way that you'd like?
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the biggest things with making this record was being open to it being bigger than myself, and not to say that I closed off to that idea, but I think my first EP thing was kind of like not hyper personal, but it was I wanted to be kind of transparent, and this one I wanted the focus to be more about it's going to sound crazy, but like the human experience as like a kid or a teenager, more so than just my experience. And I think people have been receptive to it, and I'm actually really thankful, because a lot of what I actively do and I guess not actively do is like test myself and put myself in uncomfortable places when making music. So the fact that a lot of, a decent amount of people have been like really happy about the record makes me happy, because it's an exposition. I do it not only for myself. So I think a lot of the response that I've gotten has been super positive. There's some negative, but that's, to be expected. And the fact that there's even any conversation about it is like a blessing in itself.
Now that the record's been out a little while, you've had some time to maybe gain some perspective on it and see some of the other kind of points of view on it. Is there anything right now about the LP that maybe you wish you could go back, change, do differently, or stuff that you're taking away from it that you're planning on, sort of doing different for the next project?
I think there was some records where I played it not really safe, but more than I could have stretched idea a little more, like Clear Bones. I really liked the way the record came out. Also was just like inspired by Weezer and stuff like that. So I don't know. I feel like there was some stuff that I could have expanded on more. And since I use so many different voices as my own voice, and I'm not really like a feature heavy person, just because it's like, I don't know. I like to be able to keep control, because I'm like a control freak sometimes. But I think that was like the biggest thing. So maybe in the future I'd have more guest appearances on the project, because one of the things that I'm starting to see more so is that I want to be open to like expanding the world or the soundscape outside of my own vocal tones and stuff like that. So in recent time, I actually been working with like more people than I've ever worked with my entire life. And that's also just because the access has changed. So there's more access for me to like reach out and experience music with other people. So that was, I don't know if I'd necessarily change the fact that I had not too many features or only one feature. I think I wouldn't press myself to like do so much in terms of like vocally, when I can, definitely pull somebody that can sing a part way better than me, or bring a person in that I know would be able to make the drums hit a little harder, or, maybe give me a different perspective, because I usually work in really, a closed condition, where it's like, it's me, Zach Fogerty, and would bring in people when we needed them. And I think now I'm kind of building more so of like not a roster, but I'm building like a team. So it's like somebody that plays keys way better than I do, or somebody that's going to do guitar amazing that I couldn't come up with myself. So I think that's like the biggest thing that I've gotten perspective on myself, and nobody's, commented on it, because I think I do a pretty decent job at not making my voice be the boring thing. Because it's like, it's 13 tracks or whatever. It's like you're going to hear me over and over again, but just making sure that it comes in different formats.
Yeah, I mean, with Pixelback, there's with Pixelbath, there's not much to speak of in terms of features, but the one major feature you did get on the record was ASAP Rocky, which, I mean, when that's your singular feature, that's kind of a statement. Can you go into exactly what made that crossover happen and the process of kind of getting it together?
Yeah, for sure. It's funny because I had a meeting. This is post Bad Sports. A label wanted me to come in and talk to them, and I'm just like, okay. And I'm really bad at not label meetings because I don't necessarily like pitching myself, and it's like if you bring me in, like I would assume for you to have the conversation. Nevertheless, we go in, and I'm thinking that I'm speaking to like an A&R, and I'm definitely not. I'm speaking to an A&R's assistant. So in the meeting, which was fine, but so they had no signing power or anything like that. But what they did have was just like a lot of positive things to say. So I was really happy to hear that coming from somebody in the label at the time. And this specific person, well, this girl, she worked at that label, and then she got hired by ASAP Rocky's manager. And I don't know what her specific job title is with ASAP Rocky's manager, but she told him about me because she had been watching me since Bad Sports. And yeah, so he called my team, was like, yo, we'd really like to meet Gene, X, Y, and Z. So we met, and I was playing pieces of Pixelbath that were done pre it releasing. And he was like, yeah, I really want to get you in with Rocky. And I'm like, cool, I'm with that. So it was probably like 3 weeks that I hadn't heard from anybody. And I'm like one of those people where it's like, don't care if it doesn't happen. It's like, it's cool. It's cool if it happens. Like for me, anything is cool if it happens. But if not, like, I'm not stressed about it. And then I get a phone call, just like a lot of people in music, you get this weird phone call from somebody and you think they're pranking you. It's like, yo, what's up? And I'm like, yes, hello. Like, and it was just like, yo, this is Rocky. And I'm like, word, this is Rocky, this sick, whatever. And then we start talking or whatever. And then obviously it's Rocky. And he was like, yeah, I love what you do, blah, blah, blah.
When this was all initiated, was there some anticipation that he would be coming onto a track of yours or vice versa, or there'd just be some kind of general crossover and nobody knew what direction it was going to move?
Exactly. So like, it was never like my thing was never to like get a feature or anything like that. I think that's most people's instinct when you meet somebody that you like, is like, oh, I would love to get him on a record. But at the time I didn't have a record for him to be on. So it was kind of, if I don't have a place for it, I'm not going to ask for it, because it's just like, it's useless kind of, where it's, I could be like, yo, hop on this. But actually it wasn't kind of the opposite. It was like that same day he called me, he's like, what are you doing? And I live in Los Angeles, and he has a place in Los Angeles. And I'm like, oh, I'm literally not doing anything. And he's like, yo, come over. And this is like COVID time too. So like, thankfully I have like tests that I can take myself for my COVID stuff. So tested myself negative, and I was like, all right, I'll come over. So I ended up going over his house, and then there we worked for several weeks on just like records, and just like chopped it up, hung out, and we became really good friends. I think the initial meeting was like, he kind of saw that I wasn't super like, oh my God. It was just like, this is cool. You're a human. I'm a human. I take dumps. You take dumps. Like, we're normal as hell. Right. So once our relationship kind of got established, and we were working together during COVID a lot, like I was just at his house watching fucking cartoons and stuff. Finally he was like, so what are we doing? And I was like, do you want to get on this record? And he's like, yes, I've been waiting for you to say something. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't want to just like come in and just be like, yo, I'm whatever. And I was like, this is like a perfect place for you to be on this record, because I wanted to build this like moment that felt kind of opposite of what you do, because it's like it's not going to be drums and there's not going to be a lot of stuff. It's going to be very ambient, and it's like you're going to be the main focus on that section. And I built the section out, and then he laid a verse down, and it was beautiful. I was like, wow, this dude on record, like his voice is so punchy, like it's just Rocky's voice. And that's pretty much how the feature came about. And it was like super, super organic, where it wasn't like, yo, I need this or I need that. And like, I also worked on some stuff for him. May come out, may never come out. I have no idea. But yeah, he's like an actual very genuine person. And I anticipated the opposite, because I get all my information from the internet, just like most people. So I'm like, he's going to be an asshole because he's cool. And like, me and cool people don't usually get along, because I'm not somebody that considers myself cool. I'm just like a normal dude, and I don't get excited about much. And he was super hospitable, fucking amazing human being. Didn't expect it.
I want to go into for a second your I guess in a way your origin story, because you haven't come to prominence in the underground in the same way that a lot of other people have. You know, if many people here don't know, you know, you were born in Mexico. Can you explain or just go into a bit of detail? I know this has been discussed before, but I'm sure a lot of people watching would be curious to know how exactly you came to transition over here and kind of forge a, you know, a music career for yourself in America.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the common misconceptions too about me is that I was born in Mexico, but it's not necessarily wrong. I was born in the States, so I'm like a citizen. I moved to
Mexico. I've literally seen that written like over and over and over about you. So thank you for like you know demystifying that.
Yeah, no, it's all good. Yeah, I went to elementary school here, and I moved to Mexico, and then I kept going to elementary school here. I would cross the border every single day, and hence why my English is. And I, grew up with the only stuff that was like really Americanized for me was like my media intake, because I watched American television, even though I lived in Mexico. I watched, regular MTV like most people did, and listen to CDs, because my mom was like a big music buff.
And this was like during the 2000s.
Yeah, it's like
were you watching some TRL? Oh, like 90.
Yeah, no, I was definitely watching TRL, but I was born. I was watching BET. I was watching TRL. I was watching Rap City. I was watching MTV, and I don't know if MTV Jams was a thing yet, but definitely was watching a lot of MTV Jams. And then I was also watching like a lot of. My cousins are older. I'm one of the youngest in my family. I'm like not the youngest. My little brother's brother is the youngest. But yeah, so I was watching everything that my brother was consuming, and my older sisters and my older cousins were watching. So I had a lot of exposure to a lot of stuff that I probably shouldn't have been watching. So like I did see a lot of like, I remember watching Kurt Cobain's like Unplugged. You know what I mean? Somebody had it on, I think it was my cousin Jessica. She had it on DVD. You know what I mean? So I was able to get a lot of that stuff. But yeah, I was able to forge like kind of like a musical path, kind of coming into the end of middle school. Had a friend, and he had GarageBand. And that was like my first ever like dive into recording anything. And then 9th grade, I met my best friend to this day, Red. And Red, he had this program called Magic's Music Maker 6. And yeah, British program, super user friendly, probably not the best program, but it got the job done. And he, like, I had like a raw aspiration for music, but he had a lot more information. So he really taught me like counting bars, and he taught me like song structure, a pre, a chorus, like everything that I needed to know. And we ended up making music together, all the way through high school. And like I said, every Friday we'd watch your videos. We'd watch your videos every Friday, eating In-N-Out, and just like talk about your takes on stuff and agree with them. And then we had our like times where like, nah, Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. So we agree and then disagree or whatever. But um, yeah, it was my journey into music was one that was like organic, but also it was like kind of like a coming of age story. Like I was, involved in a bunch of other stuff that I shouldn't have been doing, and definitely got saved by Red and other friends that were like, "Yo, you can rap," and that's what it was in the beginning, and I always wanted to do more than that, but I also just didn't have the resources, and coming up in a not even middle class, because I think all Americans believe that we're in middle class, but we were definitely not middle class. We were definitely poor. Coming up in that, so I didn't have a lot of access to a lot of things. I would go to Guitar Center every weekend with Red and bang on synths and pianos and everything that they would let us touch, and they would let us do it for hours and hours, like to the point where they just knew us. Like it was kind of tight. Like that's the one thing I love about Guitar Center. It's like they don't tell you to leave, even though I'm pretty sure they'd get annoyed because it's a kid that doesn't. You're trying to play Stairway and you're doing it horribly, and it's just like loud as hell. But yeah, so that happened, and then I moved to LA for university, which I ultimately ended up dropping out because I was going to school for film, and I was like taking out loans, buying studio equipment, doing things with the money that you get to buy books. I never bought one textbook while I was in college, and then I started making bad sports during college, and in a dorm room with like Stacy, and that was pretty much like where I was starting to take myself serious, and that's why I ended up dropping out, because I was like, this is like all I want to do all day.
And when you were working on a lot of your earliest stuff, were you kind of functioning off this similar balance of genres that you're working with right now, where it's like a bit of hip hop, it's like a bit of ambient stuff, it's a bit of electronic music, it's a bit of rock, it's like kind of this really chaotic mixture of everything? And is that sort of like the place you've always been coming from, or was it kind of more singular early on?
Early on, it was like, so I also grew up under the people that I was like, wow, this is sick, was like Odd Future. So again, dating myself a little bit, but I was doing rap music, but my interpretation of what rap was very like nuanced in a sense. So it was singular because I was listening to Cannibal Ox and fucking Aesop Rock and like things that probably a regular 15-year-old would be like, why are you listening to Vast Air? And that's what I was listening to. So it was like really weird, and there was like things that didn't really add up. I remember being a super big like Eminem's Infinite fan. Like I was like, wow, this is fucking crazy. So it was more singular when I was younger, but as soon as I got access to play more instruments and because I've always kind of played piano. I kind of taught myself piano through YouTube, and I'd keep a piece of paper with scales on it, and I would bang on it like on my notebook. You know, when you put a piece of paper behind in your notebook, that little saran piece or whatever the fuck that is. I'd like pretend that I'd be playing piano, but I would be practicing scales even though I couldn't hear it. So I was able to, as soon as I was able and had the resources to do more than just write words in a book, because that's all I could do, because I didn't have instruments, I didn't have money to buy instruments, and I didn't have money to get lessons for anything. When I got in college, that's when, or right before college, I was making a transition. So I made my like first indie rock record on SoundCloud, which is called Stain Bones. Before I was a freshman in college, I believe. I made it that summer going into college, and it was the first moment I ever felt musically fulfilled.
And what year was this specifically again?
So this is the height of Mac DeMarco. So, what, 2013, 2014? So I always go off years off of when people were well, not when, but like when people were most popular. But the height of Mac DeMarco and the height of, for me, was like indie rock for me. So like I remember listening to Beach Fossils to today still being one of my biggest influences, was like, man, I can't do this, especially because I didn't have a band. I only knew how to play guitar enough to like write some notes down and write some chords down, but not enough to like do anything substantial. And then when I got access to be able to play guitar every single day, that's when I started to like dive into different worlds. And then I always was like a big James Blake fan and or supporter rather. There's like a lot of different elements of music that I was a fan of, but I had no idea how to make it. And not even to make it, but to get similar tones. And then as soon as I did, it was just like a free for all where I was like, oh man, it's over with. Like, I understand how to do all of this now. So I'm going to try to do everything that I possibly can with no reservation of like what should happen and what shouldn't happen. So, I just developed like a grit for like not having fear of something sounding horrible, because of, you know, my Death Grips influence, my fucking Bjork influence. There was a lot of just different sounds where I'm like, there's no reason why this can't go together if they respect each other's boundaries and sound. Because you can make a rock song and add 16th no hi-hats and it's going to sound fucking horrible, in my opinion. And you can scream some rap shit over it, and it's great. It's cool. But also, it's like you're going to lose one sense of one sound to the other. And that's the one thing that I wanted to perfect, was like not a balancing act, but just doing things in a sense where I'm not afraid of like this, not like putting a heavy metal breakdown in the middle of a rap record. And I'm like, this hasn't been done. And I'm not doing it for the sake that it hasn't been done. I'm doing it because I want to try everything.
You know, you talk about a lot of your indie rock influences being recent, but as I listen to your record, I mean, it seems like you do take a lot of influence from the old school as well.
Oh, for sure. I mean, and then there's a lot of like the references that are recent is just because like those are the ones that I can really put my thumb on. But you know, I was listening to a lot of like different, like I always talk about shoegaze, and like trap music is the new shoegaze for me. But like Playboi Carti is a shoegaze artist. I don't care what nobody says. Like Lush, and I mean Cock's Twins, like there was like a lot of actually like very OG. I mean, AR Kane. There's a lot of stuff that I was listening. That's the one thing that I do is like I'm a data hoarder. So like I'll collect music. Like when I was, even now, like I still download shit illegally. Download my album legally if you want. I don't care. And I'll just collect it because I have a fear, this super irrational fear that one day streaming services are going to implode, and then just where's all your stuff, and people aren't using LimeWire the same, or FrostWire, or whatever wire you're using. So I was listening to literally everything that I could get my hands on, especially stuff that were in a genre that I didn't grow up in. Like I didn't grow up going to indie rock shows. All my friends that were like crust punks and stuff like that, they hung around all the Mexican homies. Like there was a lot of different influences. So there was not only just recent, but there's like pretty much any genre except country, because I'm stupid and I still haven't have my deep dive into country, even though there's probably some amazing stuff in there. I have like a pretty good understanding and just like a pretty good reference points for most stuff. So, I mean, the old stuff was like Morrissey, and that's not necessarily indie rock, but like Morrissey, you know, all the Manchester like wave of music and stuff like that.
Well, do you feel like because your, I guess, associations and connections with indie rock is just like more conceptual and tangential as opposed to like, oh yeah, I was there back in the day, so on and so forth. Like, does that impact your sort of approach to the sound, to the genre? I mean, I guess like maybe the most obvious way that could be is that it gives you more leeway or sort of more freedom, or, you know, a desire to fuck around with it and do different things with it because you're not sort of like beholden to a formula. But are there other ways that you feel like it sort of changes, you know, your perspective on the genre?
I think my the biggest asset for me, my specific upbringing, is that I was exposed to damn near everything because my mom, again, was a music buff. But I wasn't attached to any one like scene of music. So even when I was with the homies that we were doing shit that would have essentially got us put in prison. I was listening to stuff that didn't fit that scenario. So I was able to look at it from a different perspective, like being four black kids in a car and I am the only one with my headphones on and I'm listening to Nirvana. And it's just like, this makes sense to me. Like, cause I'm applying this feeling to something that probably had no intentions for being this moment. And that's the same thing I talk about when I'm Mexican people love Morrissey and stuff like that. It's like, there's, for whatever reason, like there's such a weird place that we put music in our life experience that is so this, like, I'm not an old white dude that has a CBGB shirt and just like, I was there, you know, I know the real, like I was, it's like, nah, I was where I was, whatever the real was, that's great. And like, I respect it, but I also am not afraid to like, take that stuff apart and take the aspects that I do like about it and like that I don't like about it. Like I love guitar solos and people don't really do guitar solos anymore. And I'm like, yo, it's an amazing thing. But in the same vein, it's like there was such a format to where like I'll put a guitar solo in the beginning of a song. Somebody's like, what the fuck are you doing? And I'm like, see, that's because again, you're in this like this thing where everything has to be so pragmatic. And I don't think that I don't think that I have to ever be, not that I don't have to follow rules. I respect them. I mean, I learned song structure for a reason, but I think not being attached to any one a scene of music made me open to all of them. It's just like being that kid, and I know there was a lot of kids like that didn't have just one group of friends where you just could migrate from place to place and still just be like yourself. And I think that's what I became with music, and that also gave me a different perspective because I don't have to look or dress like Mac DeMarco to put reverb on my guitar and play some really pretty stuff. I don't have to be that. So I think it gave my life situation a different perspective. Like I'm talking about having guns and doing the things with my guns, but you will hear these pretty chords and these things that don't necessarily fit that. And I think that duality isn't something that I just make up. It's just my life experience going with my experience with music in a way that I don't think I would, not even myself, maybe a few years ago would have thought about how important it was for me to be listening to Heaven or Las Vegas while I'm running away from cops. Like that's not something that I think I appreciated at the moment, but now when I look back, I'm like, wow, that's some ill shit. Like I don't think many people have that same story, or taking your homie that just got out of prison to a Mac DeMarco show. Like that has no idea what that music sounds like, and I'm like, yo, just relax, like just listen. And those experiences, I think, give me like a little bit of a different perspective on a music that is highly respected and has existed for a long time, or different formats of music like electronic stuff.
You know, I don't necessarily have like a question here, but more of a comment. I mean, I really see, you know, your story here and a lot of what you do is kind of being like this ongoing, almost like blurring of musical and cultural lines that I see happening, like especially with like young Zoomer musicians and fans, where it sort of seems like the internet is breaking down the social and cultural barriers between different genres, because there's like no in-group, out-group, click, culture, whatever, stopping you from clicking on anything. You know, there's not going to be a bunch of dudes at, you know, sort of the place where a certain genre or sort of, you know, music scene is happening, you know, to be like, no, not you, you know, for whatever reason they say it, you know, or people who look threatening or look weird, or, you know, people may just be shy or just not want to approach because they're unfamiliar with something, you know, but the internet just allows the ability to just insert yourself into anything. And, you know, being somebody who is like really at the threshold of this ongoing evolution, like, where do you feel like it's going? Are we essentially reaching a place where music's just going to become one mixed up singular genre, or is it just going to like continue to become more diverse or something? I don't know.
I think about this like actually very often. I think you put it the best, where like the most clear is like the biggest thing that's breaking this thing. this deconstructing or demantling of divisiveness in music is the internet. Because the communities in the internet are so faceless that you don't necessarily need to look a certain part to be a part of a certain thing. And it's like the Reddit forums, and you don't know who's in that Reddit forum. You just know that it's a little icon of Miley Cyrus.
Yeah, yeah. Well, like when you go on hip hop Twitter on YouTube, it's like nothing but like pictures of popular black rappers, but it's like every 16-year-old white boy that you could like ever imagine behind every single one of those avatars.
Best thing to happen in music, in me again, since I'm living in it, I'm always going to be like, oh, this was a great time. I think it's the best thing happening in music is almost this thing becoming a singularity. Like it gets so big and so progressive that it's like a singular thing where the way I explain it is like people that have done it in the past, I don't think we're aware that they were doing it. And even for me, like when I make something, I'm not like, I'm going to throw some some harmonica in this because I want it to feel, like Bon Iver sneezed on the track. I want this to be a specific thing because I want it to be, not just for the sake of it being different. And I think more kids are starting to lose the fear of just being like, I look this way, so I can't do this thing. Like I remember the first time I performed the song I have called Anti-Warp. I performed it at like my brother's photo gallery that he had in LA, and I'm going up to the microphone and I look the way I look, whatever it is, and I have like a mouthful of gold teeth, and all of a sudden all you hear is these like really, really Juno sounding, not Juno the piano,
yeah,
Juno the movie
Juno
sounding chord.
the movie soundtrack.
Yeah, it's just like dum 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 dum. I'm like, yeah, this is a coming of age film, but you're not. If you want me to come to the stage and start rapping the hardest verse you've ever heard in your life, no, I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna sing to you, with looking the way I look, and not to do it to get a shock out of you. It's just because this is what I like, and I can be a person that looks the way I look and like what I like, and nobody can tell me otherwise. And I think a lot of that is attributed because I grew up and currently growing up in a generation of music that there's really no boundaries because there is no real cliques. I mean, yeah, there's people that are like, I love modular music. I love this kind of music. And if you don't know about this pedal, then you can't be it's like, yeah, there's still going to be purists in anything. But I think the most beautiful thing is like what music is intended for at least me, is like acceptance, and not only acceptance in mass peoples, but acceptance in yourself. So I remember being fearful of showing my friends like me listening to Nirvana, because I'm like, they're gonna think that I'm emo, and they're gonna think, and this is like again a very 2000s look on that music, but like, why are you listening to this, and why aren't you listening to Lil Jon, and why aren't you listening to this? And I'm just like, this is sick, and Lil Jon is great, but like I always don't feel like feeling like that, and I always don't feel like feeling like this. So there's a certain duality, and I think what music is coming to, and I hope it goes to, is that people aren't making music to fulfill a playlist. I hope that people are making music to fulfill, like, not their own individuality, as cliche as it sounds, but to fulfill the multidimensional aspects of being human and our human existence, where there's literally no rules of how to do something and what's the right way to do something. And the more people become open to that, I think the more music will grow. Because I swear we've heard everything and nothing is ever new, right? So now I'm super okay with that. I never want to be the forerunner of just like, oh, we need to make a new version of music. It's like, no. We have so many. It's like reading books and just, I'm going to write a book. I have never been able to read anything. I've never read anything, but I'm going to write a book. It's like taking the inspirations that we have and applying our own iterations and changes to the things that are seen as standard. The best way I explain it is like Prince. Like, nobody can tell me. I mean, there's probably somebody that can break it down, probably you. But Prince for me was genreless. Like Prince was pop music, but pop music isn't necessarily a sound of music because pop music changes with every generation. So for me, it was like Prince wasn't just breaking barriers. Like, yeah, amazing vocalist, crazy guitarist, whatever. But was Prince making rock music? Was Prince making R&B music? Was Prince making whatever? And same thing with Michael. And it's like, well, it's just pop music. And it's like, well, now everything sounds like pop music. Everything is pop music at that point because nobody knows what anything sounds like.
I mean, good points, great points. And, you know, I love your perspective on that. And, you know, I hope things are kind of moving in that direction as you described. You alluded a little bit earlier to the Mexican music scene and sort of like the musical diet of people down there. You know, for people in the chat and everything who are totally unfamiliar, like, could you, I guess, illustrate some of the major differences between like what's popular musically in Mexico as opposed to the U.S.?
Yeah, I mean, just like the US, there's definitely subcultures and everything. So like the most popular stuff in Mexico will revolve around kind of the environment that you're in. So like it's kind of like here in Mexico is like a place with internet as well. So there's people that listen to literally everything. They'll know all the new artists before even we know them. And then there's people that like a generation back from mine that are like, you know, not even a generation, but like people that are in their 30s or people that are in their 40s that love like the Smiths. And then there's a generation of people that love like, you know, Selena and all these things. But when we're talking about Mexican music, like not Mexican, like Selena was a Mexican or whatever, but talking about like corridos, which is like the best way I put it is Mexican trap music, where it's big band, but they're talking about trapping and they're talking about women. And there's corridos tumbados, where it's like it's the same big band music, but it's super inspired, at least lyrically, by hip hop, which is super crazy thing right now. It's like they talk about designer clothes and like the Rari that they just bought and stuff like that. And that's like a generational iteration of music that my grandmother loves. So corridos, like my grandmother's from Sinaloa. So like she's closely lived very closely to where Chapo is from, El Chapo. And that music is a music of like, you know, the drug lords. And not only that, there's a lot of positive messages in that music stuff in that genre, but there's also a lot of disconnect with people that are in Mexico that don't speak English, but they like very, very specific types of music. So like my mom grew up loving the Scorpions, didn't speak a lick of English. My mom loved Morrissey, which most Mexican people love Morrissey, as I've said before, and still to this day don't know why. And you know, it's a very pungent love for Morrissey and the Smiths, and like the Smiths have a very, very big place in my heart. Although one day Morrissey's going to get punched in the mouth by me and I'm going to get sued by him and I'm probably going to go to jail for a little bit. So get your free Gene Dawson shirts ready, please. Make sure that the typeface is Helvetica bold. I don't want to see any of that other shit. Please do that. But there is a certain like, you know, amount of people that love specific genres of music out there, and I still don't know the connection. But I guess it's the same thing for me in loving like Russian music and not knowing what the hell they're saying and not even how to pronounce the title. I just know what the song sounds like, and I'm like, yeah, this is amazing. So I think it's like universally everybody's going to get put onto something that maybe they don't understand. But Mexico's a very peculiar place because there's like an emo scene. Like there's a club in TJ called Rubik's. Rubik's is like if anybody's from Mexico in the chat or TJ in the chat, you'll know Rubik's. And it's like it's like an emo goth bar, and they play nothing but like synth goth shit, and it's an amazing, fabulous place. Like we would go there during the summer with homies that lived in San Diego, and then you're just like around the most goth people you've ever seen in your life. Not one of them is speaking English, but they're the same, like from format to format. It's like the only difference is their language, and they listen to the exact same things. And even like in San Diego, I don't know if you've ever listened to Prayers. Listen to Prayers. They're called Prayers SD Killwave. They're cholo goths, and it's like one of the most musically.
Oh yeah. I've caught their music videos on YouTube.
Yeah. So they're from Sherman, I believe. Peta. Oh, he's not in here. My little brother is more informed about that stuff than I am, but I think they're from Sherman, which is a gang out there, and they make they make stuff that is inspired by like Britpop, and it's like, but they're real life like don't fuck with me cholos. Like you will get shanked one way or another. Like for the longest, they were doing shows. If I'm not mistaken, they were doing shows where the lead singer is singing in front of like all array of different amount of people, but behind him he had a big ass dude with a machete and goon mask on because people were actually coming to get him because he was an actual affiliate. But the music that he was making sounded nothing the way he looked, and it's like that shit would bring tears to my eyes. So I'm like, yes, this is the shit that I live for. When somebody's not afraid to paint their nails and he wears lipstick and he's fully blasted, tats everywhere, and it's just like you still are not gonna fuck with that guy because he will real life fuck you up, but he's gonna sing about how he doesn't feel okay with himself, how he feels like he's threatened every day, how he feels like these fears that he has, and he's gonna do it in a vocal tone that sounds damn near British, and it's like it doesn't make any sense, but it makes all the sense.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many weird genre crossovers that are happening sort of like in the shadows like that as you're talking about, but simultaneously it sort of seems like that stuff is becoming almost mainstream a little bit. Maybe the most popular that I could think of that people have just like accepted but aren't really like actually thinking how weird it actually fucking is the fact that drill like occurs in Chicago, gets popular as a genre, pops off and evolves in its own way in the UK, and then that very sound comes back over to New York. And then people in New York are like, yeah, we're just going to make a bunch of fucking tracks that sound like drill from England. And, you know, again, that's like, that has just been readily accepted and has been taken in such a way where nobody's even talking about like the origin of it or anything. And, you know, like so many of the fans anyway. And, you know, has anyone's like, personally, I remember a time where it was like, when I was like getting into hip hop and not just hip hop in general, because I mean, I grew up in the 90s, but like getting into hip hop on the internet, you know, like listening to newer artists who are like a little bit more online and stuff. And in the process, like coming across grime and coming across Dizzy Rascal and coming across the streets and stuff like that, like trying to get anybody who I knew to listen to any of that shit was like, what, the accent and this and that and the other thing. I can't, you know, it's like, why would I ever fucking listen to that? I could just listen to Biggie. I could just listen to Wu-Tang or whatever, because on, you know, on the East Coast, it's like, that's kind of the predominant sound at the time. But again, you know, but now it's sort of like, yeah, this is just like, this is in the rotation. This is cool. Like, you know, Drake having, you know, grime artists on his record. That's whatever, you know, it's just cool. And it's, you know, crazy how things have just become like so borderless and international. And ultimately, I don't know, I think it's for the better. But as you were kind of describing, you know, back to the Morrissey thing, you know, what's so odd about that is that whole like love is so pre-internet, you know, which makes how popular it is like even more mysterious.
I like wonder if there was just like a really crazy tour that they did, and that like, again, since it's pre-internet, you get all your information for either the TV and media rather from the TV or word of mouth. And like, I wonder who that first person was. Is like, yo, listen to this, and it just was like crack, where it's like, yo, I'm going to show somebody else and they're going to ask me more. Oh, I'm going to like go to Mexico City and fucking wear a Morrissey shirt and see how many times people are like, you know what I mean? Like it's actually, you know, even on the grime stuff, or even, you know, people getting inspired. Like I have this homeboy that, you know, makes all intents and purposes like grime music, American as hell. And I'm just like, wow, I wonder, like, because the time signature is different, the production is way different, but it's like his biggest inspiration. And I'm just like they don't even call it rap. It's like, it's not rap, it's grime. And it's just like, all right, I'm not going to have that chicken and egg argument with anybody ever about anything. But I'm like, okay, cool. But it's crazy when it does circle back to the US and then people are doing it like it's not new, but it's like a whole different, it's like the shit came from Chicago. Like the shit was like right around the corner. It had to go overseas for you to get it, which is like, I guess the craziest part about it. And it's great, you know, like rest in peace, Pop. But when Pop Smoke was doing with his bass, with the basses like fluctuating and doing those specific tones, I'm like, wow, that's super UK shit, and it's just like super okay. It's perfectly fine, and I think that's great. I think there's a lot of like crossovers. Like one of the biggest one that I've noticed as of recent is like this, and I don't take responsibility because I don't see myself as, but I hope that it's not my fault, and I hope that I have nothing to do with people doing like super quintessential Smashing Pumpkins shit with like trap drums on it. And like I want no part to do with it. Like I sometimes I feel like, man, I swear before I was doing this shit, this didn't exist. And I'm wrong, 100% probably wrong. Because there's many people that were doing it, and then like there was like your little peeps and stuff like that. But it's getting to a point where I'm like, all right, dude, like it's a lot. Like I hear the chord progression, it's great. Like I hear the angst, it's sick. But like as soon as the trap drums come in, I'm like, yo, what the hell happened? And it's cool. It's like I don't hate on any form of music. Like when I don't like something, I just say it's not for me. Just because like it's literally not. It's for somebody that's going to listen to it. But that's the one thing, like MGK's transition into rock. I think Post Malone had a big part to do with it, even though I don't think he was doing necessarily rock music, but I think he was taking the stigma off of like, okay, I came in as a rapper and I want to do something else, which is totally fine. I think that what I've been able to see personally is the change in it happening with Black artists, and that's what I'm like really happy about. Even though I don't necessarily like the sound, is I love seeing kids dressed like vampires every day. I love seeing people want to be rock stars or whatever the idea of a rock star is, because that's like a time that we weren't necessarily like. I wasn't around to go see, fuck, I'm drawing the craziest blank. I wasn't around to see, Black Ice and tour. I wasn't around to see Van Halen. Like, I wasn't around to do that shit, or even like, how are Black kids getting onto like a style of hair metal in their fashion every single day? And that shit freaks me out. I'm like, yo, why is your hair like that? It's sick. But like, what was the like thing where it's like, yo, I want to wear all studded shit, black leather, and start putting mascara on. And I didn't know when that transition happened. All I know is I was really happy about it. I wish the music was I wish there was more hair metal in what they were doing, because it'd be sick. But and then I think you would get, and I might be wrong, but you'd get a lot more East Tumors than you would like Lil Pumps that are rock stars, because East Tumor is an actual rock star in real life, rather than it just being like, I like the aesthetic of a party, like a sex party band, but I like the sound of Chief Keef, which I guess where I fall in the category is like, I like the feeling of a Mac DeMarco, but I also grew up listening to Chief Keef. It's a really weird transition, and I really love it though. It's cool. I wish the music was a little different. I wish that it wasn't so concerned with what being a rock star is, and I wish it was just that, but
yeah, I mean, genres can be really great from a fan perspective in terms of like being able to seek out sounds and styles and everything that you're interested in. But sometimes like focusing on that so much as a musician or as a fan can make you forget. And I think a lot of these examples that we're talking about illustrates this, is that so many of the ideas in all music across the board are just like so universal. The moment that you take them out of whatever context or culture that they're born in and present it to somebody completely out of the blue, like, they could attach their own meaning to it and sort of derive their own enjoyment from it. I mean, another, instance of this, and I'll go on to something else after I mention this, but you were talking about before the interview doing like a Vice documentary as a joke, but there is a very interesting Vice piece about all of these indigenous tribesmen in Australia who are really into heavy fucking metal music, and they're really into Slayer, and they're really into like new metal stuff. And, obviously just like any other colonized country, it's a complete tragedy where you have like these indigenous people in Australia that have been like, moved into these other areas. And, you create situations where you're sort of like bunching these tribes that at one point were separate and now they're all like, kind of living together in this commune that they've kind of built for them. But, regardless, white Australians who were kind of like going out to these areas every so often to either check in, bring aid, whatever. Some of them would have music with them, burnt CDs and stuff like that. And, would bring stereos and that sort of thing. And, they were just like showing them various kinds of music. And it's like they were really into the fucking heavy metal music. And eventually you saw a point where a lot of these separate groups started defining themselves by the bands that they listened to. So there'd be like Metallica tribe, there'd be Slayer tribe, there'd be, this whatever thing. And they're all just like really into fucking heavy metal music. And it's like, one of the things that they'll do collectively is they'll like get one of these stereos and they'll like, pick their favorite CDs and songs or whatever. And they'll all like kind of collectively dance and sort of do their thing and let each other have like their thing, do a different heavy metal band. Look it up on YouTube. It's a whole fucking documentary about this one phenomenon. It's totally insane.
That sounds so sick, man. I could see how tonally it would work too, just because like this probably not culturally insensitive, but it's probably me being a stupid American. Is like the didgeridoo does sound like metal vocals a little bit sometimes, like really, really dark, like heavy metal stuff. You play the didgeridoo right, I'm pretty sure you can get that tone. So maybe tonally. Tonally, that's where it's just like, oh, we know this. We've been doing this for years. It's just they add crazy drums.
I want to ask you about the progression of your career at the moment. And I guess we're going a little long in this interview at this point, but, you've been saying a lot of great stuff. So I think we could just kind of continue for a bit. You're coming up and gaining momentum during a really strange time, like, not just socially and politically, but also with the pandemic too. And, considering all of these factors, like, is that impeding your progress or kind of like slowing things that you would like to do, or kind of like, lowering ambitions at the moment that you would kind of like to, kind of reach the stars with right now?
The only thing that it bums me out is that I can't tour, but that's like the smallest problem in the world right now. So like that's like my brain, like, I want to tour because I want to touch the ground everywhere and I want to look people in the faces that have been so like helpful to me and got me to this place.
And for you, doing a tour could like potentially like mix together so many different like like groups of people from different walks of life and everything, considering like how many different sounds your music touches down on.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that I've wanted to do is one of my focuses in music, or my fulcrum in music rather, would be to galvanize people, and not in a sense where it's like we're all in this together. It's just like we're way more alike than we know, and the only reason we don't allow ourselves to know that is because we're a fear of not being accepted. And my whole life I wasn't accepted, and one of my biggest things is like I want to literally accept everybody, except racists and rapists. Like, y'all can die fast or slow, but everybody, and make everybody feel like they have a place, like it's welcome home. Like, fuck, like these are your people. Like, here, right here is all your people, and you don't realize that they might not look exactly like you, they might not sound exactly like you, but these are your fucking people. And that's what I felt like on the internet when I wasn't, like, a lot of that I've gotten from and I keep it short, but a lot of that I got from like what Odd Future was doing. Like, I'm a really big Earl head. Like, when I was like on OF Talk, like on that forum, like Kevin was on that same forum, and me and Kevin talk, it's like I've known you forever. For one, because we were on the same forum, but I've known you forever because we had the same thing. And it's like we all looked different, and it didn't matter, like, because we're on the internet. And one thing I want to do is bring that into reality, where it's like, if you're at one of my shows, you can hug, I mean, post-COVID, you can hug the person next to you and just know, like, when we leave here, I'm with you. Like, I'm right here with you, because I spent a lot of my time, a lot of my life alone. And I wanted to be an athlete. I wanted to be the cool kid. I wanted to be accepted, and I wasn't. And when I realized that that was okay is when I found my one friend Red in high school, and he was just as weird, if not at more weird than I was, and not weird in the sense of like traditional weird, but weird as in we just don't fit in, and not for the sake of not fitting in. We just literally don't. Um, I felt at home. I felt safe. I felt like I wasn't going to be judged, and that's one of the things where not having shows right now bums me out, because I want people to have that sense of community on like a really grand scale, and I think that's kind of like the hubris Michael Jackson had with "We Are the World" shit. Like, I think it's the same kind of like you can save the world with music, and it's like I'm not trying to save anybody. What I'm trying to do is make sure that people, like, I'm not a savior. I'm not a like. It's kind of a big theme that I'm kind of working on, but it's like I'm not a guide. I'm not a fucking shepherd. I'm not nothing except somebody that's like you, that is trying to make sure that you know that like I'm right here. It's that one friend when you really are in a real bad spot and they're sitting there with you while you're crying and they can't say anything to you, but they're there, and that's enough for you to remember that. Is like kind of one of my focuses. It's just like you don't have to cry, and I hate when people call my music sad boy music. By the way, that shit bothers me because like I actually real life take antidepressants and I try my best to be a vibrant human. So it's like I still give off sad boy aesthetic, and I'm like, yo, look, dude, my whole life, like that's my alarm to take my medication. Look,
I see.
that's to take my medication. But one of the things that to answer your question in shorter too is like I'm happy that I got to be something that maybe gave people a little bit of escape from the current situation, whether it's political or, you know, just a pandemic. I think it was really, I mean, serendipitous, the way that it happened, because I can't be around anybody. I can't really, you know, express how I feel with you in front of me. But I think it also's given me a new perspective on how to engage with the people that are so loving to me and so caring to me, because just because I'm not with you or I'm not going to your city or I'm not in the show doesn't mean that I still can't make you feel a certain kind of way. Like, I tried my best to answer at least like 15 DMs a day of things that I think are are enough for the time, because if I start a rabbit hole of doing all of them, it's fucked and it'll never end. And I'm pretty sure you know the exact same feeling. But finding a new way to articulate my love for people without having to physically be there, I think not only in music, but just in life in general. So I think my trajectory in music is an oddly specific one, because it's not, I can name friends that are artists that are coming up in the same time, but another generation of music is like coming up in a time of a pandemic where you can't look like my grandfather. I guess I have never talked about it. My grandfather and grandmother both got COVID. And my grandfather was on his deathbed. Like, grandmother was asymptomatic, tough as nails. That's my lady. My grandfather is also one of the toughest humans I've ever met in my life. Super vulgar, funny as hell, drinks alcohol every single day. He's old as hell. He's a bodyman. He works on cars and whatever. He was quarantined since the beginning of the pandemic. Well, now he's still, but not really. And nobody saw him except my aunt. And my aunt was caretaking for my grandparents. And he got COVID, and it was the first, like, my family was like, yeah, this might be like the last time we talk to your grandfather. Like, real life, like, he's not responding, he's not walking, and it was like a really big deal. And this is around the time where they told me I was going to have my first billboard by YouTube. And like, I couldn't really be excited about it. I was just like, that's cool, dog, but my grandfather is dying. Like, this is like, there's a lot of things that were happening at the same time, but it's kind of always happened. Like, Bad Sports, when it came out, I was going through like a depressive episode where I was like super depressed for like 3 months, where I didn't leave my house and I got agoraphobia and I couldn't go outside. And my album was coming out, and I remember crying on my mom and telling her, like, I can't even appreciate the fact that like this thing that I left school for, that I put so much time and effort into, I'm not even going to see how what happens to it. Like it's just going to exist and whatever. And the same thing kind of went with Pixel Bath, where it's like, how do I promote an album when the world is in shambles? How do I do this without looking like an idiot or insensitive to people's real life situations? And I think what it was is like finding that balance of like, well, the world needs healing. I'm not a savior, but one thing that I can contribute to at least one person is knowing that like for 3 minutes, you don't have to think about the outside world for 3 minutes. Or if you want to listen to an album for 40 minutes, you don't have to think about the outside world. And if that's the little bit thing that I can do during a pandemic, other than charities and stuff like that, then I'm going to try my best to make sure that those fucking 3 minutes, I didn't waste your time with something that I didn't try hard on just because I could put something out. So everything is kind of timely and it takes its time. That's why when the kids ask about the vinyl, what's up with the vinyl? It's like, bro, I want you to have these things, but I want you to have the good version. I don't want to just fuck you over just because I can. Nevertheless, yeah, it's an interesting place to be. And I think maybe in retrospect, if God gives me life and I am also, you know, making spectacular music in the near future or whatever, I hope that the transition out of the pandemic into, you know, a new normal will be one that is like where I can achieve those same things that if I wasn't in a pandemic that I could, because nothing's going to stop me from doing what I want to do. You know what I mean? So I think it's a peculiar place to be, but it's one that I don't mind.
I'm going to throw a few viewer questions at you in a second. Before we do that, I want to do a quick 90s lightning round. Are you more a Smashing Pumpkins guy or a Nirvana guy? Of course.
Nirvana.
Pavement or Modest Mouse?
Pavement.
That's the wrong answer, but it's okay. Green Day or Blink?
Oh. Okay. Green Day.
And Pixies or Weezer?
Oh, I know that's fucked up. I know it's fucked up. That's not.
I know it's not fair.
That's not fair.
Okay.
Weezer.
You know, honestly, it's like your head says Pixies, but your heart says Weezer. Yeah.
That's fucked up, man. That's like, oh man. That's like you can't. I don't know. I can't rationalize that in my head.
Again, because it's not logical, but you just feel it. You just feel it.
Yeah, it's like you know that you should say the other thing, but you're not.
Darius J5 wants to know, and maybe you could go into a little bit of something else off of this. He wants to know, how did you come up with the Pixel Bath cover art? Because it's so satisfying and aesthetically pleasing. Now, personally, I'll say that I've noticed this along with all of the other visuals that you sort of put together. I mean, are pretty high quality, creative, and most likely are very deeply connected to your film background and studies in that. Like, could you go a little bit into, again, creating that cover, but also just like, your visual influences and sort of like how you approach visual projects and, kind of like your ethos creatively when it comes to, more visual aspects of your art?
Hell yeah. Yeah. So, oops. This came out. No. So this helmet for the album cover, I'll start with that and then I'll go. So whenever I attack a project, I'm usually thinking about the visual component of it is the same capacity as not the music. The music's obviously more time consuming and more detailed. The visual components just come while I'm making the music. So I'll write everything down and I'm like, okay, this is how I'm going to do this. I want this big, I want a boxing bag hanging from heaven, essentially, or whatever the fuck. I think when it comes to, for one, I've been blessed. My brother, he's the guy I tag in every single one of my posts. He's been taking photos of me since I was 13. His name is Nico, but it's S1R. And he's always been okay with me thinking the most outlandish ideas, and he's like, let me find a way to make it happen. So I've been super blessed. It's always a collaborative effort. Um, so the first, I guess I could, no, can I spill the beans? Maybe. I guess I can spill the beans, whatever. So that back there, the blanket right here with me and the red helmet, that was going to be the original cover, which nobody knows, but that was going to be the original cover of the album.
Is that like a woven blanket, and then you have one of your other album cover?
Yeah. So my brother actually, it's really weird having a big ass photo of yourself looking at you while you do things, but I think it's fine.
Are we continuing a blanket for every album release? Like we're gonna.
Yeah, it'll be a blanket. Yeah, he wanted to make them for people, but I was just like, I don't want people like I don't want to be under people or on top of people if things are happening. I'm like, I'm good off it. I'm also a very PG person, so I'm like, nah. But so that was the original idea, and I was like really happy with it, and it looked really good. And most like other things where me and Nico are working on anything, I changed my mind a lot. I'm like, no, can't be that. No, it has to be this. It has to be this. And he has to go along with the ride, and he hates it, and he hates me for it. He's like, man, I just spent this much time on this, but if you have another idea, it's obviously going to be better. So let's do it. So I guess when I was working on the helmet one, the biggest reason, and I guess I never talk about it because I'm one of those people that don't really like talking about the inspirations behind something, but I also don't like being a person that's like, oh, this is an inside thing. You can't know about it. Fuck you. Because I do it to share it. The football helmet was really a message to my dad. Me and my dad don't have the best relationship whatsoever. The most time we ever spent together was when he would take me to football practice in high school. I hated football. I hated playing football so much because I'm tall as hell, but I'm like, I guess because I'm a compassionate person, I'm soft. So everybody thought I'm tall and like, pretty wide shoulders and stuff. And at the time in high school, I was like 250 pounds or something like that. I was a really, really, really big kid. I like lost all the weight during the summer and then got cute looking, and then my life changed because it was like I've noticed how fucked up the world was. Nevertheless, very thick boy. So I played football, and we spent a lot of time together while I was playing football. He would take me to practice, and it was like I kept playing football because I wanted him to take me to practice. And it was like, and it sounds sad, and it kind of was, because I was like, man, I just want to hang out with you, but you don't want to hang out with me unless I'm doing this thing, so I'm gonna do this thing. And then one day I got tired of it, and I was just like, you know what? Like, I'm not gonna play this sport. If you're around, you're around. If you're not, you're not. And obviously he wasn't. So when I was doing the football helmet, it just meant the most to me because it was just like, I'm like, you would take me to practice, and now it's like I'm not doing the sport that you wanted me to do, but I'm doing something else. And it's also bad sports. There's a lot of athletic related stuff because my family's pretty athletic, and I was the only one that's like, I'm a draw. And so I was like, I want to have a football helmet that is a reflection of like how I see the world, which is like everything is hyper aestheticized. So like colors are more vibrant. There was a point in my life where like colors meant nothing, and I was like devoid of a lot of feelings and stuff. And I'm like quite the opposite now. So I can't see the colors that you guys see through the visor, but you guys can see the color. And that was like also one of the things where it's just like, it feels this vibrant because it's this thing. And it also goes with the album title, which was given to me by my brother Red. He was going to change his artist name in like 2010 to Pixel Bath. And Red still makes music to this day or whatever. And I remember trying to start the project and asking him like, what are you going to do with Pixel Bath? And he's like, that old ass shit, like nothing. And I'm like, can I use it to my album cover? I kind of want to dedicate the album to you in a way, because we're like actually doing something now. And a lot of the album is dedicated to him because if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be making music. So that's the insider on that. When I come to the visual components of like everything that I do, it's just, there's always kind of like there's like a meaning behind it. And I don't always like to explain it because sometimes it's just for me. It's like my little like selfish moment where I'm like, this is something that I can remind myself stuff with. And then sometimes I do share it because some people might have a similar experience, but I do focus a lot on the way things look and the way they're supposed to feel, to me at least. And I try to interpret that through visuals as well as the sound. So a lot of it is really, really, really detail oriented. Like there's never really a reason why I do something. Like I don't ever do anything for the sake of just doing it. So there's always like more to it. And then I also am like, I fucking hate and I love that I hate that I love. I have a really, really weird relationship with Quentin Tarantino. No, I don't know him, but like my appreciation and distaste for him, because sometimes I'm like, you do questionable shit and I will punch you too. But like also Samuel Jackson likes you and I like Samuel Jackson. It's a whole thing. One of my biggest things with Quentin and Pixar is that their ability to put Easter eggs and stuff. And then when you finally realize it, you're like, oh shit, that's that and that's that. So like a lot of the stuff that I do is kind of pre-planning for that. So, and that it gives it away, but like good luck finding the stuff because it's there, but good luck because I bury it. It's all like visual stuff too. So I just take my time, and it's literally like just making sure that I'm giving the best possible interpretation for something, because I want things to live well beyond me. Like even the first album cover, it looks like you're about to listen to like some goth boy rap shit, maybe, I don't know. And it's quite the opposite. There is some rap in it, but it's really soft. And this one thing that I wasn't just trying to play with your perspective, but I'm trying to play with the idea that something needs to be something that it isn't. So I don't know. My mission statement for design and visual stuff is always to have it be a supplement to the thing that already you're doing, and also have it mean something, because you don't want to just like MF Doom. Like there's a reason why MF was wearing the mask. Like there's a reason why MF Grimm was MF Grimm. There's a reason why a lot of the things that I love was like very wrestling oriented. Like it's like we're playing characters. We're either playing a villain, a hero, anti-hero, whatever. And not only leaning into that, but putting your own personal perspective on that. So yeah, it's actually really cool.
One thing that kind of came to me as you were saying all of that, I not only love the album cover myself, but all the other photos that the whole series that you did of like different headwear and to go along with the record too, and looking at your oh nice, looking at also the some of the music video concepts you come up with, like the visuals are can be pretty crazy, but the thing is like you're not working with like a Beyonce level budget. How do you sort of shoot for the stars and, like pull off some of these like more insane and abstract and out there ideas, but like keep things in budget at the same time?
Oh man. I'm like, for one, blessed. I'm blessed to have people that believe in me as much as I believe in them. So whether it be Zach Bailey, who has been my director for most of my stuff. I work with a lot of Zachs. Zach Bailey, Zach Fogarty, who produces with me, and then Zach Madden, that also has directed stuff with me. But Zach, my favorite thing about collaboration is people that don't think I'm crazy, but they know I'm crazy. And that's like one thing that all the Zachs I think know is like when I'm coming up with something, they're like, this dude is it's gonna be a shit show, but it's gonna work, because whenever I'm not to say all my ideas work, because I've failed 100,000 times before I was able to do anything right. They're all able to ignore the first initial like you sound insane and look past that and being like, okay, let's rationalize. So a lot of the video concepts, me and Zach Bailey, and I use Bailey as an example because we've worked the most together, but me and Zach Bailey have sat down like not even a round table. It's me and him in the backyard, and I'm smoking cigarettes and I'm saying the craziest things that can come out of my head. And he's like, we could do that. I think we could do that. we could do that. And then he finds a way to do it. And like, I've been blessed because he's also somebody that's believed in me and been able to pull so many favors to make what I want happen. And not what I want, but something that we can both be prideful of. And it's super apparent that we've been able to really shoot for the stars. And like, if we miss, like, we tried. And that's always been kind of my stance on anything that I do. It's like, if it doesn't land, like, it's fine. Like, you're not going to die. Do something else. So we've been able to make videos that look like they're $100,000 when really we had to put in all the muscle and man hours because we can't afford things that people can afford. And I guess that's like the scrappiness in us. I guess it's like when you have to be utilitarian because you don't have a lot of money, that you figure out how to make things work. Like the first mic I ever recorded on was taped to the Nike SB box because I couldn't buy a mic stand, and like it was taped on the box on top of the computer tower. So us being super utilitarian and them believing in my crazy is kind of like the ingredient. The secret sauce is like, I want to hang a boxing bag from heaven. And this is like, how do we do that without buying a crane or with buying a crane or getting a helicopter? And we figure it out. And then people are like, how'd you do that? And I'm like, I tell you, but I'm not going to, because it takes the movie magic away. Unless it's a kid that's like, yo, I don't have money. I want to do something similar. Can you give me advice? And I'll be like, yes. But other than that, it's like, I'm not going to just say it for the sake of saying it.
Cookies Za wants to know, like the track Policia, are you going to have more Spanish songs on the next record? Is that something, you aspire to, work more into your stuff?
Fuck no, I'm just kidding. Yeah, of course. It's the reason why I don't do more of it is also just because it's like, I don't want to do it just for the sake of doing it. When I do it, it's because, not that all the stuff isn't meaningful, but when I do it, I want it to feel very specific to the song. Like, I don't go into the song like, I'm going to speak Spanish on this song. It's like, it has to lend itself to it. So I don't go in with the perspective like, I'm going to make a Spanish record. It's like, this song will sound better in Spanish, and that's how Policia
being a bilingual artist, can you, I don't know, put any explanation behind the idea, which I know is the case, but I rarely ever hear anyone talk about it. I'm trying to formulate my question here, but there seems to be this, I guess, general consensus that certain things sound better in certain languages or flow better, or, certain things are said easier or more effectively or are snappier in certain languages. And I don't know, like, can you explain that separation or what drives you to say a certain thing in one language as opposed to another?
I think it's like the sentiment a lot of the time. So like, for Policia, that record was highly inspired by, vocally at least, Los Prisioneros. There's a song called Tren al Sur, and it's like Train to the South. And the vocal tone of that stuff, those are some dudes. It's not Mexican, it's a Chilean band, but those motherfuckers had to love Morrissey, because I'm pretty sure that came out post Smiths, but it's definitely like Smiths inspired. And I think the sentiment when you say something in another language, like for me, I love Japanese music, but also because I'm an anime dweeb, that it's just like, this won't resonate the same in English, even though people can't hear it. Like, you can read the lyrics somewhere, but this is going to feel authentic to the sound, at least for me. So I guess like the best way to answer the question is like, yeah, it's like a weird, like, okay, for example, when you talk to me and you ask me a question, I'm thinking in Spanish and answering in English. So the voice in my head is speaking Spanish, and then I have to translate that as I'm listening and speak English. And I think I do that same thing with music a lot of times. So I'll listen to Bodak Yellow. I don't know why that's the first thing that came to my head. Bodak Yellow. And I'm hearing the song in Spanish in my head, at least translated, and how long the phrases would be as if it was in Spanish. And I'm like, that would be horrible. So I guess conversely would be how I translate from English to Spanish. So if I'm like, in Policia, it's like they're trying to get me. Instead of saying that, it's like it's not the opposite, but it's like saying it quicker and faster and feeling like it's in your face. It's kind of like how bands from, it's not Iceland, is it Icelandic bands? Icelandic metal bands that sound like IKEA names. Is that what that is? Yeah. Sound like IKEA names or whatever, or they look like IKEA names. It's like, them motherfuckers are not the ones to play with, because the way they speak, you're like, yeah, I'm so good off of that. Like that's not some playtime shit. Like they're on some whole other shit, even though they're probably like lovey-dovey and bears or whatever. So I think it's the same perspective for me, at least in Policia. It's like when you hear somebody yelling in a different language, it kind of hits you different. Like you go into a Vietnamese market and they're yelling in Vietnamese and you're like, yeah, I'm good. Like I'm not fucking with them because they will fuck me up. It's kind of like the same perspective, at least for me.
No, I mean, I think there's something to that. Last fan question I'll ask you, the Atomic Baby, and then I'll let you go. Considering you mentioned him earlier and his recent passing, I thought this would be apt to ask, but this person wants to know, how much did MF Doom influence, your creative process, getting you into creating and writing music, if at all?
So I think it would be a secondary influence in terms of like that influenced somebody really close to me and they influenced me a lot. So MF Doom influenced Red a whole lot. There was like a certain amount of anonymity that Red still follows. Like you can go and look and find pictures of Red. You'll never find pictures of him. He lives kind of the same life as like Death Grips, where it's just like he doesn't care. Well, I don't know. I'm speaking for Death Grips and I shouldn't, but for what it seems like is he doesn't care to be seen, doesn't want to be seen, wants to make music and disappear, make music disappear, make music and disappear. And that's been Red for as long as I've known Red. And I know MF Doom played a big role because Red also is a real hip hop head. And I remember for one, when I got put onto MF Doom was the way that he would make songs. Like he would make songs that necessarily wouldn't make sense if it came from anybody else. But that was like my favorite thing from like Cannibal Ox's Vast Air stuff was like Pigeons, the record. Like it feels like, this is off-putting, but it's in the best way possible. So I think for one, MF Doom passing or transitioning and nobody knowing that he transitioned is like the coolest MF Doom type shit to ever happen.
That's the most MF Doom thing.
It's the most MF Doom thing. And I think the influence that I've gotten from MF Doom is not being afraid to not highlight my anonymity, but also just like have a certain aspect of you that people aren't really like in the know of. Songwriting wise, like uncomparable flow. Beat selection, uncomparable. Vocal presentation, just like Biggie level. I don't know why. I feel like MF Doom and Biggie are like alternate universes of each other. Like one's a comic book version of the other, even though they don't really sound the same. But other than that, it's just like not being afraid to wear a mask, and literally and metaphorically, it's like wearing a mask to not only protect yourself, but to be something greater than just a human for people. And that's kind of not because of MF Doom, but I can see why it would influence me to wear the Starface mask and it's like Bowie's face makeup. It's like wearing a computer head, wearing whatever. It's like sometimes you want to shield yourself for your safety, but also to make people feel like they can connect to something that's just bigger than another breathing human. So MF Doom, with all capital letters, we love and will always miss him.
All right, well, man, thank you for coming through and talking with me and going long. You talked a while, and it was
for having me. But this is a conversation that I've been waiting to happen. So as long as I can been making music. So I'm just happy to be, on the phone with you. And one day, if you give me a 3 or a 0, it's all love still. Just don't wear the flannel.
Okay, if I ever give you a 3 or a 0, I will forego the flannel for
all right,
for you.
So the people can watch it and like, I didn't wear the flannel. This is not even the fucking thing.
Well, I'll just have to point out that I made a promise, and I'll follow through with it.
Hell yeah! I'm gonna get a 10 one day though. One day, it'll be great.
Fingers crossed.
It'll be great.
Fingers crossed. If you have an album coming out, make sure that you start a Polymarket HQ page where people take bets on what the score is going to be, because apparently there's like a $2,000 plus page over there right now where people are taking bets on what's going to be my Drake review score for
What's stopping you from betting on yourself and knowing the answer?
Yeah, I know. Well, apparently it's, if you read their TOS, it tells you it tells you that would be fraudulent. So it's I'm not trying to risk it all for $2,000 on Polymarket. I guess is all I'm saying.
Or you could get a rat hole and then you could just give somebody else the money to do it, and you're going to tell them. Yeah. Anyways, we can talk about it.
We'll talk about it after the stream. I'll after I do. Look, I'll get the score together. I'll do the review, and then in the dead of night, I'll DM you a single number, and you'll know what it is.
No,
you'll know what it is.
Hell yeah!
I'll DM. No. I will DM you. I'll make it even more mysterious. I'll DM you a certain number of photographs of Bernie Sanders, and then the number of Bernie photographs. And then from there, you'll need to determine whether or not in the photos, is he looking light? Is he looking decent? Is he looking strong? You'll have to. So it's open to interpretation.
Hell yeah! Did you start doing rating stocks for companies and just be like, look, this company is very and then you just give the whole thing of the company and just be like, you should probably buy. I mean, I'm giving it a like 6 out of 7. So yeah, but no, it'll be great. I mean, you definitely, no, I want to say one more time, thank you. Like, regardless if we ever talk, if I get a good, bad, whatever review from you for like being somebody that I definitely like grew up watching and feeling like a part of a community, which was the community that you built, the one that rides for you and also rides against you because they like fucking with you.
For me and against me. I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah, and it's like the best thing. And I've definitely, whoever the kids there are in the comments, like, if you make music one day, you'll probably be talking to Anthony. So try not to go too hard on him, because he
one thing I hope, and this will be the last thing that I say, one thing I hope is, if I do give your next project a negative review, I hope my fans turn against me. I hope they turn against me on that one.
Like, no, it's my next project, I guess I'll leave with this. My next project is it's like, it's really fucking
all right.
good.
Well, we're looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to the project. I'm looking forward to everyone unsubbing for me. I'm looking forward to more dislikes than likes. So, and honestly, it's like, I would be more proud of that as a musician. It's like getting a positive review from Anthony Fantano. It's like, oh yeah, everybody likes it. Getting a negative review and everyone in the comments like, fuck you, Anthony, 6,000 dislikes, only 100 likes. Like you're looking at my social blade. You see my YouTube numbers are just dropping. They're just like going into the toilet. I'd be more proud of that.
That's like the downfall of a king, which I wouldn't want to be a part of. I'd just be like, look, man, it ain't what it ain't. I didn't win a Grammy, so fuck. Fuck it. If I get a 10, it might be better than a Grammy one day.
All right. Well, Gene Dawson, thank you very much for coming through, and we'll link you guys down below to, obviously, streams for his new record, his social media, the review of Pixel Bath 2, and again, we appreciate you coming through.
Thank you for having me.
Have a good one.